Imagine a building with no architect, no blueprint, yet 500 species call it home. Right now, as we speak, this is not a fable. This is happening right now, inside every surviving oak forest on the face of this planet. Where a nearby pine might sustain 30 species at most, a single mature oak quietly supports more than 500 distinct forms of life. What transforms an ordinary tree into a functioning ecological city, a living metropolis built from wood and leaf and time? The answer lies in an evolutionary history stretching back 300 million years, and in the web of relationships an oak has spent millennia building. The oak is not a single species across the world. More than 500 distinct oak species grow, from low Mediterranean scrub to giant temperate giants of North America. Yet all share one defining trait that changes everything. They produce acorns, a seed upon which nearly the entire temperate forest ecosystem depends. The English oak, most widespread across Europe, can live to 1,000 years, reach more than 40 meters tall, and spread a canopy wider than 25 meters across. A tree like that has witnessed empires rise and fall, while doing only one thing, quietly and without pause, sustaining the lives gathered around it. The leaves are where the story begins. They contain a compound called tannin, that bitter, astringent quality that makes them difficult for most insects to digest. But here is the first surprise. Despite the tannin barrier, more than 280 species of moth and butterfly caterpillar have evolved specifically to eat oak leaves and only oak leaves. 280 species. Consider all other native trees in Britain combined support fewer than 100 caterpillar species in total. This number is not merely a pleasant statistic. It means the oak stands at the base of a feeding tower so vast and so irreplaceable that nothing else can substitute for it. The caterpillars that feed on oak become food for hundreds of bird species, and this link, if severed, collapses the entire chain above it. The blue tit, one of Europe's most widespread woodland birds, depends almost entirely on oak caterpillars to raise its chicks through the breeding season. A single pair of blue tits, raising one brood, needs up to 10,000 caterpillars in 3 weeks alone. 10,000. Without oak, no caterpillars. Without caterpillars, no birds. And without birds, the insects and parasites that damage farmland lose their last natural check. This is how a single tree becomes, without intention, the backbone of an entire ecosystem, not by design, but because evolution placed it at the center. But the leaves are only one flaw of this story. There are deeper flaws, stranger, more important ones waiting beneath. But before we descend, look up one more time, because on the bark itself, an entirely parallel world is already in motion. The deeply furrowed, ridged bark of an oak creates thousands of tiny recesses, each one a separate dwelling for a different species. Hundreds of lichen, moss, and fern species anchor themselves to oak bark, transforming the trunk into a vertical hanging garden entirely self-sustaining. Lichen alone accounts for more than 500 recorded species on British oaks, each one shelter and food for yet smaller creatures living within them. The hollow cavities of old oaks are a story unto themselves, apartment towers built not by hands but by time, and wood decay fungi working across centuries. More than 40 species of bird and mammal in Britain depend on such hollow cavities to nest, including barn owls, barbastelle bats, and the rare lesser-spotted woodpecker. Now let us talk about the acorn, because no seed on Earth is transported, stored, and replanted with such extraordinary sophistication. A mature oak produces an average of 20,000 acorns each year. In mast years' rare and unpredictable boom years, that figure rises to 70,000. 70,000 acorns from a single tree in a single year, laid end to end. They would stretch more than 7 kilometers along the ground. But the oak does not plant those seeds itself. It relies on a partner that co-evolved alongside it across millions of years, the Eurasian jay. A single Eurasian jay can carry 9 acorns at once in its specially adapted throat pouch and may complete up to 90 journeys a day throughout autumn. Each autumn, a single jay buries between 3,000 and 5,000 individual acorns in separate locations across a wide territory, each one placed in its own shallow cache. The bird remembers roughly 70 to 80% of those locations. The rest, they germinate and become new oak trees. This is one of the most exquisitely balanced mutualisms in nature. The oak feeds the bird with rich seeds. The bird plants the oak with those very same seeds. Crucially, jays do not cache acorns near the parent tree. They carry them up to 5 kilometers away, allowing oaks to colonize new land in ways the wind could never manage alone. After the last ice age, oaks recolonized all of Europe within 10,000 years, far faster than wind-dispersed seeds could ever have achieved on their own. Evidence from ancient pollen grains preserved in peat bogs shows it was jays that led that advance. Not wind, not water, but a bird carrying seeds one by one. The oak-jay relationship is just one of hundreds of such partnerships. The oak maintains simultaneously, each one finely tuned across millions of years of co-evolution. Squirrels are also acorn cachers, but less reliably so from the oak's perspective. Squirrels recover around 85% of their stores, a higher retrieval rate than jays. The oak bets on forgetting. A small fraction of the thousands of cached seeds is never retrieved, and it is precisely that forgotten fraction that becomes the forest's future. In mast years, when oaks flood the forest floor with acorns until the whole woodland browns with fallen fruit, there is a precise scientific reason behind this extraordinary abundance. Oaks in a woodland do not produce mast years individually. They do it together, synchronized, as though an invisible conductor coordinates every tree at once. The mechanism behind this synchrony is not fully understood, but the strongest evidence points to shared weather cues, particularly the combination of a warm summer and a cold winter in the preceding year. The why behind mast years is where it gets truly interesting. By producing far more acorns than seed eaters can ever consume, the oak ensures a significant portion survives to germinate. This is the strategy called predator satiation. The tree cannot flee. The tree cannot fight. So the tree simply produces more than any enemy can ever consume. And because every tree in the woodland does this together, no squirrel or jay population can grow fast enough to keep pace with the combined output of an entire synchronized forest. Now, let us go down below the surface, into a world that only in the last century have we truly begun to understand. The roots of a mature oak can spread twice the diameter of its canopy, reach more than 2 meters deep, and total hundreds of kilometers of combined length. But roots do not travel alone. Attached to every finest root tip are millions of fungal threads, thinner than a human hair, the mycorrhizal fungi that change everything. This relationship is not optional. Without mycorrhizal fungi, a young oak seedling cannot absorb sufficient phosphorus and nitrogen from soil to survive its first season. In return, the oak transfers roughly 20 to 30% of all the sugars it produces through photosynthesis directly down to the fungi through its roots. 20 to 30%, an enormous investment, a third of the tree's entire income transferred underground to a partner invisible to the naked eye. Those fungal threads do not stop at the oak's roots. They grow outward, connecting with the roots of neighboring trees, weaving an underground network linking the entire forest. Scientists call this the wood wide web, and through it, trees exchange not only nutrients, but chemical signals, messages passing through the dark, like whispers between neighbors. When an oak comes under insect attack, it can signal through the fungal network, and neighboring trees begin increasing their defensive tannin production before the insects ever reach them. This is not conscious action. No decision is being made here, but the outcome resembles a coordinated defense system of astonishing sophistication. The oldest, largest oak's mother trees are typically at the hub of this underground network, connected to more trees and transferring more nutrients than any other node. When a mother oak is felled, the younger trees around it often decline and die in subsequent years. Though the direct cause is not always immediately apparent, the fungal network beneath an oak forest is not inhabited by fungi alone. It is home to thousands of species of bacteria, nematodes, mites, and soil organisms of extraordinary diversity. 1 teaspoon of soil beneath an oak holds more living organisms than the entire human population of Earth, most of them species we have never named. And all that subterranean diversity depends on one thing falling from above: the oak's autumn leaves, decomposing into the humus layer that feeds the entire system from below. Oak leaves decompose more slowly than most other tree species due to their high tannin content accumulating into a deep, moist, acidic layer that is the ideal habitat for certain specialists. Salamanders, newts, and many other amphibians overwinter in the damp oak humus layer, the thick leaf blanket, providing more stable insulation than bare ground. Now look up again into the canopy, because the space above is not merely foliage. It is a vertical city with entirely distinct floors, each inhabited by different specialists. The lowest zone, just above the ground, is beetle territory. More than 1,000 species of beetle have been recorded living in and around a single veteran English oak. 1,000 beetle species from a single tree, while all of Britain has only around 4,000 native beetle species in total. One oak tree hosts a quarter of the national beetle fauna. The stag beetle, the male's enormous jaws, spreading like a stag's antlers, can only reproduce inside the rotting wood of decaying ancient broad-leaved trees. Its larvae spend 5 to 7 years developing inside the rotting heartwood, feeding on wood already partially broken down by fungi, no rot, no stag beetle. This is the oak's vertical dependency chain. Fungi decay the wood. Larvae feed on decayed wood. Woodpeckers eat larvae. Owls hunt woodpeckers, each link made possible by the last. And fungi are not merely a food chain link. The mushrooms emerging at an oak's base after autumn rain are fruiting bodies of networks centuries old, the visible tips of something ancient and immense. Some mycorrhizal networks beneath oak woodlands are estimated to have existed continuously for more than 1,000 years, outlasting the forest above, which has changed entirely. Back to the canopy. Within 2 weeks of the first spring leaves opening, more than 50 specialist insect species will have laid their eggs exclusively on those fresh young leaves. Among them is the gall wasp, which induces the oak to produce strange red spherical structures called oak apples homes. The tree unknowingly builds for the wasp's own larvae. The oak grows new tissue around the wasp egg, providing nutrition and shelter for the larva, while the larva secretes chemicals that manipulate the tree's own cell growth processes. This is a remarkable example of a parasite manipulating its host. But the story deepens considerably because of what happens to those oak apples next. Inside an oak apple, there is not just a single gall wasp larva. There may be larvae of up to 7 parasitic insect species simultaneously, each one parasitizing the one before. A sphere the size of a cherry, visible on any oak in summer, inside it, a complete ecosystem with 7 layers of parasitism stacked one upon the other. This is the point at which the oak ceases to be merely a tree and becomes an ecological principle, not only sustaining life, but creating the space within which complexity multiplies itself. Visit an old oak at night, because in darkness, an entirely different city wakes. More than 20 bat species in Britain use oak trees as roost sites, many of them dependent on old oak hollows and incapable of finding suitable alternatives. Moths navigate to oaks by the tree's distinctive chemical scent, and hundreds of oak specialist moth species lay their eggs directly on the bark under cover of darkness. On warm, humid summer nights, bioluminescent fungi occasionally emerge on decaying oak wood, casting a cold blue-green glow in the darkness, the forest briefly lit by its own decay. And through that same night, the fungal network beneath continues its operations. No sunlight required. Metabolic exchange, signaling, nutrient transfer, all continuing without pause in the dark. This is something many people do not realize about trees. They do not truly sleep. Even in winter, the trunk, roots, and mycorrhizal partners continue metabolic exchange without interruption. Winter is when the oak looks dead, but is in fact doing invisible things. Sugars transfer downward, roots extend. Fungi expand their territory into new soil ahead of next spring. And when spring arrives, the oak does not start from zero. The entire support network is already primed, expanded through winter, waiting to activate the moment temperatures rise. This is why a healthy ancient oak can deploy its entire canopy within 10 to 14 days each spring. A feat of stored energy that is nothing short of extraordinary. From early May to mid-June, each mature oak leaf operates simultaneously as an oxygen factory, a sugar producer, and a chemical signaling station, the most productive weeks of the year. Now comes the chapter few speak of, the death of an oak. Not because it is a sad story, but because it is precisely here that the oak does its most important work of all. An oak does not die suddenly. It dies across centuries, slowly losing branch by branch, section by section, while another part lives on and continues sustaining the life around it. In this phase of decline, the oak's ecological value actually peaks, because decaying deadwood is one of the rarest and most precious habitats in temperate nature. More than 1,800 British invertebrate species depend on deadwood to survive. At least 500 of them found only in the decaying wood of ancient broadleaf trees. These species are called saproxylic, dependent on decaying wood. And here is the tragedy. Britain has lost more than 90% of its ancient deadwood habitat over the past 2 centuries. When an ancient oak is felled, for safety reasons or timber, what disappears with it typically cannot be replaced for 200 to 300 years. Not because there are no new oaks, but because young oaks have not had time to build what old oaks built: the hollows, the networks, the layered complexity of ancient relationships. Ecologists now clearly distinguish between tree wood and ancient wood. A forest full of young oaks is not the same thing, ecologically speaking, as a forest with even a handful of ancient veterans. When an ancient oak finally falls, an ecological event begins. The fallen trunk continues as habitat for centuries, not years, a slow feast for the entire woodland community. Studies from European primeval forests show a large decaying oak log can actively sustain a functioning ecosystem for more than 200 years after it falls. In the first decades after falling, the trunk is moistened by rain, colonized by fungi, excavated by larvae, its internal temperature 2 to 3 degrees warmer than the surrounding air. After a century, the trunk becomes as soft and saturated as a sponge, rich with nutrients. Salamanders, hedgehogs, and small mammals use its hollowed interior as winter shelter. After 2 centuries, the log is indistinguishable from surrounding soil, but within it lies an extraordinarily rich cache of carbon and nutrients that new trees will root directly into. The oak has died, but it is not finished. The saplings rising from its remains carry within them the very carbon atoms that once formed its trunk, in a cycle with no true beginning. Scientists have tracked carbon isotopes in ancient oak wood and found their signature in new trees growing at the same site. Centuries later, the same atoms, a different body. From the perspective of a carbon atom, Nothing truly dies. It only changes form, from wood to fungus to soil to new tree, a continuous transformation without any true ending. And here is the truly remarkable thing. The 500 species we have discussed, they do not only live off the oak. Together, they protect it. The insectivorous birds control leaf-eating insect populations before they erupt. Tiny parasitoids control larger parasites. The fungal network boosts the immune response at the roots. An intact oak woodland experiences far less disease and pest outbreak than a monoculture plantation, precisely because it has so many natural controllers operating simultaneously. Foresters call this resilience, and that resilience does not live in the oak. It lives in the web of relationships surrounding the oak, relationships built across thousands of years. This means that when we protect an ancient oak, we are not protecting a tree. We are protecting centuries of accumulated relationships that cannot be quickly rebuilt once lost. The next time you pass an ancient oak in a park or along a road, remember that what you see is only the smallest fraction of what is actually there. Beneath the surface spreads a network wider than the canopy itself, operating right now, in the dark, requiring neither sunlight nor anyone's attention to continue. On the bark live hundreds of unseen species. Inside the hollow, families no one has named. Beneath the leaf litter, an entire civilization of soil, without language, without record. Science still knows very little about the oak. Hundreds of species within it remain undescribed. The fungal network below still holds secrets for which we do not yet have instruments to read. A single tree can hold more secrets than an ocean. Not because the ocean is simpler, but because we rarely look long enough at the things standing still before our eyes. The oak does not need us. It has existed for millions of years before we arrived, and if we leave it alone, it will continue sustaining things we have not yet named. Imagine a building with no architect, no blueprint, standing silent in a field, and inside it, right now, 500 lives are unfolding in a story we have only just begun to read.